When I first came across dive computers with biometric integration, I honestly thought it was something only tech divers or researchers would bother with. Seemed way too complicated for someone like me doing recreational reef dives. But then I actually tried one, and it completely changed how I think about what's happening inside my body underwater. I'm Camila Reyes, and today I'm walking you through everything you need to know to set up and configure these systems properly so they actually work when you need them. You're listening to the Scuba Gear Lab podcast. Quick heads up, everything you're about to hear is researched and written by real humans with actual dive experience, but the voice you're hearing right now is AI generated. Just wanted to be upfront about that. If you've been listening for a while, thanks for coming back. And if you're new here, glad you found us. We drop new episodes every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, always focused on helping you make smarter decisions about your scuba gear. Now, here's what we've got for you today. After testing my first heart rate-enabled dive computer last year, I realized this technology is way more accessible than I'd assumed. It's not sci-fi anymore. It's practical gear that regular recreational divers can use. But here's the thing. Setting up biometric features properly can feel intimidating at first. There are sensors to pair, settings to configure, calibrations to run. Once you get through the initial setup, though, these features genuinely change how you experience diving. This is a complete walkthrough of everything you need to configure before your first dive, from sensor pairing to baseline readings, so you can focus on the reef instead of fumbling through menus underwater. Now let's talk about the physical hardware setup, because getting your sensors and hardware configured correctly is the foundation of reliable biometric integration. I learned this the hard way when my chest strap kept losing connection mid-dive because I hadn't seated it properly during setup. First thing, charge or replace your sensor batteries before pairing. Most optical heart rate sensors and chest straps use CR2032 batteries, or rechargeable lithium cells. Check your manufacturer's specs. Some sensors last 200+ hours, others need charging every 10 to 12 dives. I always charge mine the night before a dive trip now, ever since my sensor died at 18 meters during a drift dive in Cozumel. Not fun. Next, install the chest strap or wrist sensor according to fit guidelines. Chest straps should sit just below your pectoral muscles, snug but not constricting. Wrist-based optical sensors need direct skin contact without gaps. I had to move mine about 2 finger widths up from my wrist bone to get consistent readings. And if you're wearing a wetsuit, the strap goes over your exposure suit, not under it. Here's something that confused me at first. Wet the contact points on chest straps before activation. The electrode contacts on chest straps need moisture to transmit signals properly. I dampen mine with saliva or water before putting it on, which sounds gross but actually works way better than dry contacts. This applies whether you're using something like the Garmin HRM Swim heart rate monitor or similar aftermarket sensors. Check the link below to see the current price. Then you need to pair the sensor with your dive computer using Bluetooth or ANT+ protocols. Most modern biometric dive computers use Bluetooth Low Energy or ANT+ wireless protocols. Put your sensor in pairing mode, usually by pressing and holding a button for 3 to 5 seconds. Then navigate to your computer's sensor menu and select Add Sensor or Pair Device. Models like the Shearwater Peregrine TX and similar computers typically auto-detect sensors within a 3-meter range. Check the link below to see the current price. After pairing, verify signal strength and connection stability before entering the water. Check your dive computer display for a heart rate reading and signal icon. Walk around for 2 to 3 minutes. If the connection drops or shows intermittent gaps, reseat the sensor or move your computer closer to the transmitter. Most sensors have a maximum transmission range of 1 to 2 meters underwater, which gets weaker with depth and conductivity changes. Also, secure loose cables and ensure O-ring seals on charging ports. If your sensor has a charging port, make sure the protective cap or O-ring seal is properly secured. I've seen dive buddies flood optical sensors because they left the charging port partially open. Check for any visible cracks or wear on seals before every dive trip. Before committing to a real dive with biometric integration, I strongly recommend testing the sensor in a shallow pool or controlled environment first. This lets you verify readings, troubleshoot connection issues, and get comfortable reading biometric data on your display without the distraction of current or marine life. It's also a good chance to see if your sensor shifts position when you move around or adjust your buoyancy compensator. And if you're doing multiple dives per day or heading out on a live aboard, bring backup batteries or a charged power bank for multi-day trips. Sensor battery life becomes critical. I pack spare CR2303 batteries and a small power bank in my dive gear bag now, especially after a 4-day trip to Utila where my sensor died on day 3 and I couldn't find replacement batteries anywhere on the island. Moving on to the software side. Once your hardware is talking to your computer, you need to configure the settings to interpret and display that biometric data correctly. These settings determine how your computer calculates workload, adjusts algorithms, and alerts you to physiological changes underwater. This sounds obvious, but enable heart rate monitoring in your computer's system settings. Many dive computers ship with biometric features disabled by default. Navigate to your settings menu and toggle heart rate monitoring to on or active. Some models, like computers running the Biometric ZHL16C algorithm, also let you enable heart rate-based conservatism adjustments. I keep mine enabled since I tend to get out of breath on swim-throughs. You also need to set your resting heart rate baseline. Your dive computer needs to know your normal resting heart rate to calculate exertion levels and physiological load accurately. Most computers prompt you to enter this manually during initial setup, but some auto-detect it by sampling your heart rate over several minutes while you're stationary. Mine sits around 62 beats per minute, but yours could be anywhere from 50 to 80 BPM depending on fitness level. If you're not sure, wear your sensor at home for 10 minutes while sitting still and note the average. Configure heart rate alert thresholds too. You can set high and low heart rate alerts that trigger visual or audible warnings during your dive. I set my high threshold at 140 BPM. If I'm hitting that underwater, it usually means I'm working too hard or stressed, and I need to slow down and focus on breathing. Some divers set low thresholds around 50 BPM to catch unusual bradycardia, but I've never needed that personally. More advanced biometric dive computers calculate a workload or exertion index based on your heart rate variability and sustained elevation. Adjust workload algorithm parameters if available. Models like the Sunto Eon Steel let you adjust how aggressively the computer factors workload into its decompression calculations. I keep mine on the moderate setting since I'm not doing technical dives or heavy exertion profiles. Some newer computers adjust their gradient factor conservatism based on real-time physiological stress. You can enable or disable gradient factors influenced by biometric data. If your heart rate stays elevated throughout a dive, the algorithm may reduce your no decompression limit slightly to add a safety buffer. This feature is still relatively new and not universally adopted. If you want to learn more about how algorithms handle this, check out our guide to dive computer algorithms. Your computer records heart rate data at specific intervals during your dive, usually every 5, 10, or 20 seconds. Set data logging intervals for biometric metrics. Shorter intervals give you more granular data for post-dive review, but consume more memory and battery. I use 10-second intervals, which feels like a good balance for recreational diving. If you're into underwater photography like me, this data is actually fascinating to review. You can see exactly when your heart rate spikes during that perfect shot setup. Now let's get into calibration and baseline testing, because this is where most people skip steps and end up with inaccurate readings. I definitely rushed through this part on my first biometric computer and spent 2 weeks wondering why my heart rate readings seemed way off during dives. Conduct a dry land baseline test with the sensor active. Before your first water session, wear your sensor and computer for 15 to 20 minutes on land while sitting, walking, and doing light activity. Note the readings and compare them to what you'd expect. If your computer shows 95 BPM while you're sitting relaxed, something's off. This helps you catch pairing issues, poor sensor contact, or interference from other wireless devices before you're already geared up at the dive site. Perform a surface interval calibration in saltwater. Saltwater conductivity can affect some sensor types, especially optical models. Before your first dive, enter the water up to chest level with your sensor active and let your computer sample heart rate for 2 to 3 minutes while you float calmly. This gives the sensor a chance to adapt to the aquatic environment. Freshwater conducts differently than saltwater, so if you're switching between environments, recalibrate. I can't stress this enough. Log your first shallow test dive specifically for biometric verification. Your first biometric dive should be a controlled, shallow profile where the primary goal is verifying data accuracy, not exploration or photography. Descend to 5 or 6 meters, hover for a few minutes, do some gentle swimming, then surface and review the logged data. Your heart rate should show a reasonable profile. Slight elevation during descent and exertion, return to near baseline during stationary hovering. If you have access to a waterproof pulse oximeter, compare dive computer readings to a secondary pulse oximeter if available. Some divers use fingertip models in dry bags for this purpose. You can cross-check your dive computer's heart rate readings. I borrowed a medical-grade pulse ox from a friend who's a nurse and verified my computer was within 3 to 4 BPM consistently, which gave me a lot more confidence in the data. If your heart rate readings jump erratically or drop to 0 intermittently, adjust sensor placement if readings are inconsistent. The sensor probably isn't making good contact. For chest straps, try moving the band up or down slightly or moistening the contacts again. For optical wrist sensors, tighten the strap 1 notch or move it farther up your forearm. I had to experiment with 3 different positions before finding the sweet spot on my wrist where readings stayed consistent even when I bent my arm to check my dive computer display. And document your baseline readings in your dive log. Record your resting heart rate, average heart rate during a calm recreational dive, and peak heart rate during moderate exertion. These benchmarks are incredibly useful for spotting anomalies later. If your baseline suddenly shifts by 10 plus BPM, it might indicate equipment issues, changes in fitness, or even early signs of illness. Let's talk about real-time monitoring and display customization now that your sensors are calibrated and connected. You need to configure how biometric data appears on your screen during the dive. This is where dive computer biometric integration becomes practical and genuinely useful for managing your dive experience. Choose your primary data display layout. Most biometric computers let you customize which metrics appear on your main dive screen. I keep heart rate in the top right corner where I can glance at it without losing focus on depth and NDL. Some divers prefer a dedicated biometric screen you toggle to, but I like having it always visible. You'll want your most critical safety data, depth, time, NDL, and tank pressure if you have AI, front and center, with biometrics as secondary information. Set up color-coded heart rate zones if supported. Computers like the Garmin Descent series let you configure heart rate zones, recovery, aerobic, anaerobic, with color-coded visual indicators. When I'm in the green zone, 60 to 100 BPM for me, I know I'm relaxed and efficient. If the display shifts to yellow or red, I consciously slow down, check my breathing, and maybe adjust my buoyancy to reduce effort. This has genuinely helped me extend my bottom time on deeper dives. If your heart rate exceeds your set thresholds, enable haptic or audible alerts for threshold breaches. The computer can buzz, beep, or flash a warning. I keep mine set to a gentle vibration at 140 BPM. Audible alerts underwater can be startling and distract from situational awareness. Some dive buddies disable alerts entirely, but I find the subtle reminder helpful, especially on dives where I'm carrying camera gear and not paying close attention to exertion. After surfacing, you'll want to review your biometric data alongside your dive profile. Configure data fields for post-dive review screens. Set up your logbook screens to display heart rate graphs overlaid with depth and time. This visualization is super cool. You can literally see the moment you spotted that eagle ray or when you had to swim hard against current. It's also useful for identifying patterns, like whether your heart rate spikes consistently during descents, which might indicate anxiety or equalization issues. Sync biometric data with dive logging apps. Most modern computers with Bluetooth connectivity can sync to apps like Subsurface, Shearwater Cloud, or proprietary manufacturer apps. Make sure your heart rate data is included in these syncs. I use Shearwater Cloud and love being able to review my physiological response to different dive conditions over time. It's been especially interesting comparing my heart rate on calm Caribbean reef dives versus surgy Pacific sites. Before every single dive, I run through a quick verification routine. It takes maybe 2 minutes and has saved me from several potential issues, including a dead sensor battery and a loose chest strap that would have shifted mid-dive. About 15 minutes before entry, check that your sensor is charged or has a fresh battery with a green indicator light or full charge icon. Make sure the sensor is properly positioned and secured. Chest strap snug, wrist sensor 2 fingers above wrist bone. Contact points should be moistened if using a chest strap. Your dive computer should show an active heart rate reading, not dashes or searching. Signal strength indicators should show full or strong connection. Biometric alerts should be enabled and thresholds correct. And your display layout should show heart rate in your preferred position. At the dive site, complete surface calibration if switching between fresh and salt water. Your heart rate reading should be reasonable for your current activity level. If you're at 120 BPM while standing relaxed on the boat, something's wrong. Connection should be maintained while gearing up and moving around. Final check before descent. Confirm heart rate display updates in real time. Watch for 10 to 15 seconds to verify continuous tracking. Verify your dive computer's other safety features are also configured correctly. If any item fails, surface immediately after descent to troubleshoot or complete the dive without biometric data, rather than trusting faulty readings. Let's tackle some common questions. Do I need to recalibrate my dive computer's biometric sensors before every dive? You don't need a full recalibration before every dive, but you should perform a quick verification check to ensure your sensor is reading accurately. If you're switching between saltwater and freshwater, or if you haven't used your biometric features in several weeks, a brief surface interval calibration is a good idea. Most sensors maintain calibration across multiple dives as long as they're positioned consistently and the battery is healthy. I recalibrate fully only when I notice readings drifting from my known baseline, or after replacing sensor batteries. Can dive computer biometric integration actually improve my dive safety? Yes, when configured correctly, biometric monitoring gives you real-time insight into your physiological stress and exertion levels that you might not notice otherwise. Elevated heart rate can indicate you're working too hard, which increases your air consumption and nitrogen absorption rate. Some newer algorithms even adjust decompression calculations based on sustained workload, adding conservatism when your body shows signs of stress. That said, biometrics are supplementary data. They enhance safety but don't replace proper training, planning, and awareness. I think of it like having an extra buddy watching my physical state when I'm focused on underwater photography and might miss my own warning signs.
What should I do if my heart rate readings seem inaccurate during a dive? First, stay calm and continue your dive using traditional monitoring, depth, time, and air pressure, since those metrics remain reliable. After surfacing, check your sensor placement, battery level, and connection status. If readings are consistently off, try repairing the sensor, adjusting its position, or testing with a secondary device to verify your computer is functioning correctly. I've found that most inaccurate readings come from poor sensor contact or low batteries rather than computer malfunction. If problems persist across multiple dives after troubleshooting, consult your manufacturer's support resources or consider having the unit serviced. Biometric sensors can degrade over time, especially if exposed to salt water repeatedly without proper rinsing. Setting up dive computer biometric integration properly takes a bit of time up front, but once you've got everything configured and calibrated, it becomes second nature, just one more part of your pre-dive routine, like checking your BCD inflator or testing your regulator. I genuinely love having that extra layer of physiological awareness underwater now. There have been several dives where I didn't realize how hard I was working until I glanced at my heart rate and saw I was pushing 135 BPM while fighting current. That visual reminder helps me slow down, breathe more deliberately, and ultimately have safer, more enjoyable dives. If you're just getting started with biometric features, I'd recommend reading our article on choosing a biometric dive computer to understand which features matter most for your diving style. And don't skip the calibration steps. I promise it's worth the extra 20 minutes to know your data is accurate. Once you start reviewing your dive profiles with heart rate overlays, you'll wonder how you ever analyzed your dives without this information. Happy diving, and may your heart rate stay nice and calm at depth. That wraps up this episode of the Scuba Gear Lab podcast. Thanks for hanging out with me today. We release new episodes every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, so there's always something fresh coming your way. If you got something useful out of this one, I'd really appreciate it if you could leave a 5-star rating and maybe write a quick review. It actually makes a big difference because that's how other divers find the show when they're searching for gear advice. And if you haven't already, hit subscribe or follow so you get a notification the second a new episode goes live. See you next time.